Welcome to the IVM Podcast Network.
You're listening to Pao Bites with the Daily Pao.
This is Pranati
And Purva.
and we're from the Daily Pao, a Bombay-specific culture and food site. And this is our mini-series of podcasts called Pao Bites, which we run in the week between our fortnightly podcast, the Paodcast. Now, for this episode, Amit Gurbaksani, who is our third partner of the Daily Pao, isn't here as he's on vacation. So we have our columnist, Roshni Bajaj Sanghvi. She does a food column for us called Monthly Specials. And with Roshni, we're going to be talking about restaurant reservation policies, which is something I think
It's a beef for everybody.
is a beef for everyone, especially people who dine out very frequently. Now, I think the starting point of the piece that you wrote on this issue was the fact that very often you walk into a restaurant and you see that there are vacant tables, but you're told that there aren't any seats. You're turned away essentially, and this is puzzling for a lot of diners. But at the same time, there's a story behind this.
Yeah, so, we hear a lot of our friends, people that we go out to eat with, when you sit down and talk about Bombay's exploding restaurant scene, you exchange notes about which places you've tried. And invariably, 3 or 4 people will say, I've tried really hard to get a table at this place and it didn't work out, so I decided to just walk in and the place was empty. And I asked the hostess if she can seat us, and she said, no, we're fully booked. I was there for 15 minutes and the place was still empty. And I don't know why they're doing this. Like, people can't figure out why they're being turned away. Is it the way they're dressed? Is it some sort of weird marketing strategy to make people feel like the restaurant is doing well? I've heard this over and over and over again, so I decided to speak to restaurateurs and ask them what the deal is. And I found that in most cases it's because we, that is Mumbai diners, all of us, suck at restaurant reservations. So we book at multiple restaurants, and then we show up at one, but we neglect to inform the others that we're not showing. Because we've not been able to make up our minds. We're going with a group where everybody wants to go to a different place, and eventually there's some sort of consensus. We are almost always late. So, for example, when, say, I go to a place and I get turned away, chances are it's because the person who's supposed to come and occupy the table is late. Now, if I'm late, I do that to somebody else.
Right.
We're sort of paying forward our lack of
Punctuality.
and punctuality.
Right.
And if a diner is made to suffer, chances are because it's another diner who's decided not to show up or be late. It's not, I'd say, the majority of the problem lies with our punctuality and less with the restaurant.
Right. So now, but what happens? How do restaurateurs deal with this? Deal with diners coming in and seeing a vacant restaurant? I mean, doesn't it make sense for them to populate the table with people who are coming in?
So the thing is that, if I've made a booking at a restaurant and I've asked for a table at 8:30, but then I decide to show up at 9:30 because it's raining, other people from my group are late, we decided pre-drink somewhere, whatever it is, the restaurant will call me and say, are you still coming? And I'll say, yes, I am, but I'm going to be a little late. They would rather hold on to that booking because it's a commitment, and it's also a sure booking, than to give it over to somebody who's just walked in because somebody's made the trouble to make a booking, even if they're not being punctual. What has happened recently, and I've sort of noticed, is if I show up at a restaurant and they ask me, are you okay with giving up the table in 45 minutes? Which I think is a good way to deal with it. Say
Right.
our booking, at 8:30 showing up at 9:15 or 9:30, we'll have to clear the table by 9:15. Are you okay with
Right.
that?
And also a lot of restaurants have seatings. And I
Yeah.
suppose this is also one way of dealing with this. You
Yeah.
have an 8:30 and a 10:30.
Correct.
So when you do make a reservation, you know that you have a finite amount of time. You can't just show up whenever you want to and leave whenever you want to.
Not that we respect that either.
Right.
We feel like we're paying, at the nicer restaurants, a few thousand rupees for a meal. In that time, we should be allowed to
Linger,
Right.
do as we please, call for appetizers after main course,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, expect the rules to be bent because we're spending.
Yeah.
That happens. The other thing that happens is, and I gave the example of people refusing to leave the table and actually walking over to the next group that was supposed to be seated there and asking them to occupy another table at the restaurant.
Right.
In a way, the word that a lot of restaurateurs used is there's a sense of entitlement,
Right.
Yeah.
which is harsh, but it's the sort of impression we tend to give when we behave like that.
So, I mean, do they come in for a lot of bad press because of this? You know, I'm sure with this is not something that the average diner thinks of, that,
Yeah.
you know, he or she is at fault.
Yeah.
And with things like Zomato, I mean, people are very quick to post critical reviews on Zomato. And very often people base their restaurant choices on reviews that they've read.
Correct.
So is this something that bothers restaurant owners?
Of course it
When
does.
they're
If you
refusing.
if you go through Zomato reviews, in fact, for the restaurants that are hard to get tables at, or restaurants which have the 8:30 and 10:30 seating, you will find reviews, not only on Zomato, but in general, like if you look online, saying that I've given this restaurant a 1-star rating because I went there and I was waiting for 45 minutes and the restaurant was empty and they didn't give me a table. Without even dining at the restaurant, they will give a 1-star review, which will affect the overall rating of the restaurant.
Right.
Restaurateurs are now, thanks to table management systems, trying to avoid this from happening and adapting to our sense of timing or our sense of responsiveness by having table management systems that send out reminders. So either they will actually have the hostess call up a day before the dinner saying that we want to confirm your table for tomorrow at this time for so many people, and then they will get an SMS the morning off, and then they will get an SMS the evening off.
And you wrote about one such system, Zomato Book.
Yeah.
That sends out reminders like this, right?
I mean, the app, which exists on an iPad, allows you to turn on the switch for an SMS reminder, so automatically the morning off or the evening off, an SMS will go out saying that you have a table booking at this restaurant at this time for so many people, we look forward to seeing you, whatever it is.
Right.
But what if a restaurant just has a policy, just to give the impression that does that happen? Like that they're full? Because then it's not the diner's fault. And I've had this experience and I've realized that it belongs to, there's this one company that's doing this. And
Absolutely.
they're expanding a lot in the city and it's really frustrating getting a table at their restaurants. And to the point where I give up, I just don't go because I don't want to be a maybe even at the bar.
Yeah.
They don't even guarantee you a spot at the bar.
Yeah.
So they're not okay with walk-ins. So what is the message that they're sending out?
The message that they're sending out is we're incredibly popular. We never have tables available. You got to call us at least a week or two in advance, depending on how new the restaurant is or how old the restaurant is.
Right.
This is a sort of unanimous impression that diners seem to have as part of their marketing strategy.
Right.
Which, for loyalists, I guess the people who go often is different, but people who are trying to get in for the first time is a little off-putting.
Right.
But, the table management system that you talked about, it definitely makes things easier for restaurateurs because you have an easy way of, sort of seeing which tables are occupied. You have a history of table occupation. You have a history of guests.
Yeah.
And so, I remember reading that you wrote that if a guest is particularly difficult but keeps coming back, you have a history of that guest's behavior so that you know how to deal with that person.
Right.
So it makes life easier for a restaurateur.
Of course.
Does it also make life easier for the diner in the sense that, perhaps you'll be treated differently the next time you visit? Or
So there's nothing you can really do about a difficult guest because you're just making things worse for yourself as a restaurateur if you treat them with even the slightest bit of caution. I mean, you want to still be warm and friendly and hospitable and all of that. You'll probably make an extra effort. If it's a guest that tends to cancel, has made 8 bookings in the last 1 year but showed up for only 2 or 3 of them, then you know that there's a chance that this guest will not show up and you will be particular about sending reminders to the guest. How does it benefit diners? In plenty of ways. They also enter birthdays, anniversaries. They keep track of people who are loyalists. They keep track of the dishes that you like the most. They keep track of your dietary preferences. They make a note. I mean, they will make, if the more often you go, the more information the restaurant has on you, the better they can make your experience. At the moment, it's only the name of the person who's booked the table, but eventually these systems will evolve from the companies that I spoke to who are developing them, will evolve to have details of everybody sitting at the table, not just the person who booked. And we're not looking at, 10 years. We're looking at 2 or 3 years.
Right.
It does happen already in some cases abroad. If you say, for example, you like a particular table, or you observe Navratri and you don't eat like non-veg at this time, all of those details can be put in, and it personalizes your experience as you keep visiting the same restaurant.
So far is Zomato Book the most popular such table management system in the city?
If you're
at
talking
least?
about table management software, yes.
Yeah.
As a table management system, no, because Zomato Book is still new. It's only a year old.
Right.
But if you think about the system that works most efficiently, I mean, I was a regular at Samovar before it shut down. They always remembered what I liked to eat, even if I went after 3 or 4 months.
Right.
They knew which table I liked
So
to
the
sit
human
at.
brain is the most
Exactly.
efficient
And
table management
also
system.
Just the profession of hospitality. If you're good at it, you will, even if you're using a ledger and a pen and pencil, you're
I
great.
agree. And the best hospitality you get is at these smaller joints.
Exactly.
Where, it doesn't, they have the memory for these kind of things. So yeah.
And then they genuinely care.
Yep.
They actually look at you as a customer. They know you because they've seen you so often.
And they've been there for a very long time.
Yeah, their employees stick around longer. Chances are the owner knows you.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's it for Pao Bites. See you next week.
एक्सक्यूज मी भैया, एक्सक्यूज मी,
बोलिए मैडम।
मेन्यू में क्या है?
मेन्यू में सीन अनसीन है, पॉडकास्ट है, ऑन कोर्स है, साइरस है, मेड इन इंडिया, रीडिस्कवरी प्रोजेक्ट, एम्पावरिंग सीरीज, सेक्स वैक्स है, IVM लाइक्स है, सिंप्लीफाइड है, कीपिंग इट क्वियर है, टिंग्स एंड डेस्टिनेशंस है, माय नेबर सकरबर्ग है और द फैन गराज है। आपको क्या चाहिए?
एक बार रिपीट कर देंगे क्या?
रिपीट नहीं करता हम। आप जाओ IVMpodcast.com पे और सुनो ये सब, या फिर डाउनलोड करो उनका ऐप, सब आपकी उंगलियों पे।